When I reach you, you fly away. When I reach you, you don't wanna stay. When I reach you, you fly away. When I reach you, you don't wanna stay. A little lady, see me smile. I take away my chains for a little while. A little lady, what do you have to say? Someone a prisoner, I wanna fly away. Fly, fly away, fly away, fly away. Fly away. When I reach you, you fly away. When I reach you, you don't wanna stay. When I reach you, you fly away. When I reach you, you don't wanna stay. Little lady, see me smile. Take away my chains for a little while. Little lady, what do you have to say? 'Cause I'm on a prisoner, I wanna fly away. I want to fly, I want to fly away. Fly away, fly away. When the world comes through, no, don't look for me. I'll come and find you. Yes, I'll come and find you. And you'll surrender whatever the cost it may be. And when I find you, you've got to shine. You got to shine. Feel alive. Yes, feel alive, yeah. You can't fly away now. You'll never fly away, yeah. Oh, you can fly away now. You can fly away. You've got to shine, feel alive. Shine, feel alive, and shine, feel alive, yeah. Whatever the cost, whatever happens, you got to shine. You got to shine and feel alive, yeah. Fly away. Oh, you got to fly away. Fly away. 'Cause when I reach you, you surrender. You got to fly, yeah. You got to fly away. Why you gotta fly away? You got to fly away, When the world comes through, you got to shine. 'Cause every day you got to shine. 'Cause every day you got to shine.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we all doing this evening, this Friday? Really looking forward to, I've been really looking forward to seeing you today. And we've got a really, really exciting session for you this evening. It's been a busy week, but it's Friday. So let's, first of all, greet our Facebook family. How you doing? And our YouTube visitors. How we all doing? I also want to obviously give a big shout out to our members. And I'd like to just start off by ensuring that you can see and hear me okay. So if you can put a comment in the chat, I think I saw something just a moment ago. If you can put a question or a comment so that I can be sure that you can see and hear me just fine. Okay, so, alrighty. So it's been a busy week. Today we're going to be talking about mindset and, well, mindset, but in particular, learning about the mindset of successful people. So, okay, can hear you okay. That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you for that comment. So, yes, as I was saying, that we are going to be talking about and introducing you to a particular thing that successful people do. And that is that they think differently. But before I do that, I want to put into context for those of you who are joining us for the first time, what is this Friday Mind Reset Live all about? So just as a quick recap, this book I wrote a few years ago called the GPS System, which stands for Grow Personal Success. And it was really based on me wanting to convey in a non-confrontational way the findings that I had discovered over a 20-year period. And those findings were that by giving focus to universal spiritual principles, you could actually transform your life in a way that in some cases might be deemed as impossible, remarkable, or just crazy. And so I wrote the book with that intention to communicate and convey, because I really wanted to introduce the fact that from where I was standing, we weren't embracing and employing some of these principles that I've been blessed to have learned through my own studies, and particularly with my spiritual mentor of 38 years. So the result of that was that a number of people began to ask me questions, and I found myself delivering mentoring and coaching programs, and it's now grown into what we have today. Now, I say that I found myself in that position, but the truth of the matter is I actually did set the intention that I wanted to do this, but I just didn't have the detailed design as to how it was going to happen. So I set the intention way back in 2011, and here we are. So each Friday, we have these conversations, and the conversation is based on the fact that in my book, I talk about 5 key areas that if and when we begin to give attention to these areas, they can really help us have a more positive and expanded vision of who we really are. Because I think that is a key factor as to why people do not achieve success. 1, they don't know who they are, and 2, they don't know really what they want. And so these 5 areas, we address them each month for 5 months, every week on a Friday at 8 p.m. And so we have addressed 4 of what I refer to as the success pillars. And this month, our final month, before we have a break, we're focusing on mindset. So that gives you the context of where we're at in our journey and what we're going to be talking about. Last week, you would have heard me talking to my guest, Michael Oni, and talking about how through him changing his mind, from what he referred to as stinking thinking to prosperity thinking. His whole world, his whole world changed in less than 90 days. Mentally, his mindset changed. Emotionally, spiritually, he found a deeper connection with his faith, his relationship with his son and his daughter. So his son and his good lady just blossomed in ways that he just never could imagine. And of course, he turned his money situation around from, being in significant debt to changing that around and being in a really positive place, and was able to buy himself a car within a couple of months, brand new. So it's really important for us to begin to pay attention to our mindset. And I think for me today, I have no guest because there's a few things I want to share, because I really want you to just open your mind and consider some of the things that I'm going to share with you, because this is stuff that in some way, shape or form, I've been sharing for the best part of 30 years. And it would seem that it's only of recent times that people are really, truly waking up to the reality that success is an attitude that is born out of a mindset. So if we want to be successful, it really requires us in the first instance to ask ourselves the question, what kind of mindset do we currently have? And what mindset do we want to have? These are questions that we have to ask ourselves honestly. And when we've done that, then it requires us to, having done this inventory, take stock of the reality of the situation and then take the necessary action. And this is where I found that we often fall short. One, we often don't want to keep it real with ourselves. And so we will pretend that everything's okay, even though it isn't. And then we get accustomed to being in that state. And then if we do actually take the inventory and have a look and see what's under the bonnet, as it were, then we slap it right down again, because we pretend like we don't want to take the necessary action that's required to do the work. So tonight, I hope that you will be open-minded and consider some of the things that I'm presenting you. Why? Because I believe, in the same way how last year I saw the challenges that COVID was going to bring, and we put on some events and training back in February ahead of COVID to enable and equip some of our members to be able to withstand the turbulence of 2020. I believe that we are due for some more turbulence in the coming months. And it's really only the people who have a mind set, and it's two words, mind that is set, but set in a positive, outward-looking focus, that is going to be able to withstand, the turbulence that is on its way. You'd only have to look at the statistics to see how many people have been affected. The numbers and the cases for mental health issues as a result of COVID have gone way through the roof. And so my question to you is, if you don't want to be like that, then you need to protect your mind. See, I believe, my personal opinion, that this is World War III. World War III, but it's not on the battlefield. The war zone is in your mind. And if you haven't nurtured and cultivated, and most importantly, fortified your mind, then you're in trouble and you don't even know it. Suggestions will be made, your mind will be manipulated, and you will find yourself doing things, or being coerced to doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily wish to do. I think you understand what I'm saying. So we're going to have this conversation. And I'm going to bring some information to you during the course of the first hour. So at that point, around 9 o'clock, after I've invited you to ask some questions that for our Facebook and our YouTube family, then we go private. And when we go private, that's off air. We say goodbye to you all. And then it's a private conversation with our members where, because we're off air, we can ask all kinds of questions and just really go deep into the conversation. So I want to start off by just stating what I've said earlier on, that when we talk about how successful people think, it's a mindset. And I mentioned that mindset is based on two words come together, mind and set. So the question I'd like to ask you first and foremost is, do you know how your mind is set? Meaning, is your natural disposition one that leans towards what I refer to as a poverty mindset, meaning that you're always thinking and always seeing the negative in situations? Or do you have a prosperous mindset where you always find a way to find the good in any situation, however bleak it might be? These are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And if you're happy with the answer, then cool. But if you're not happy with the answer, then the question is, what are you going to do about it? You see, our mindset is actually formed by and through the thoughts that we have. Meaning, on average, it's been demonstrated that we have between 30 and 60,000 thoughts a day. Well, those thoughts that are constantly coming through your mind will actually begin to set your state of mind. And so if you're the kind of person who is constantly thinking about harming other people or doing damage to property, or that kind of a mind, well, ultimately it doesn't lead to you feeling really good about yourself. If anything, you find that that kind of person is usually angry, frustrated, not happy with themselves or with life. And conversely, the person who is always having positive thoughts and good thoughts, cheerful and happy, they generally have, a better quality of life. In fact, over time, you can actually see it on a person's face, because you see, our thoughts are invisible. It makes them spiritual in that regard. From the realms of the invisible, manifest the things in the physical. There was a study that was said once where they studied inmates in prison who had committed crimes and crimes around that whole sort of sexual abuse and that kind of thing. And what they found was that before the crime actually took place, the person had been thinking about it for a very long time. And from that study coined the phrase that where the mind goes, the body follows. So can you see why it's so important to know how you're thinking and the quality of thoughts that you're thinking? Because they literally are shaping your future. There's a saying that also goes something like this, that change your thinking, change your life. And it is so true, literally. As I gave an example with Michael Oni, he literally began to change his thinking, and his physical circumstances caught up and demonstrated and illustrated that change in his life to the point that he couldn't believe it. So I want to ask you, and I want you to think about and make a decision about the quality of thoughts that you're going to entertain. You see, do you actually even police your thoughts? meaning, do you scan them? Do you observe your thoughts? And then if you recognize that the thought does not or appears not to serve you in any positive way, decide to put it to the side and not allow it to come into your mind. Without going into too much detail, if you had joined me on my 5-day challenge recently, I spoke about as an introduction, we talked about the mind and how it is actually structured. You see, it's important to understand how our mind is, because as my spiritual mentor said, it's the greatest gift that God has given to man. And it's so funny that man doesn't know how to use it. So during the 5-day challenge, I spoke about the conscious mind, the mind that allows us to see, do, and all the things that we do, assess things. But we also spoke about the subconscious mind and the fact that although it's called the subconscious mind is so much more powerful than the conscious mind. It's where we store our pains, our woes, our memories. It's where we store things that we're not able to deal with on a conscious level and then go back and retrieve them. And so if you had, for example, a painful breakup, well, and people say to you, well, why don't you just, brush yourself down and get on with life? And people will say that to themselves and act through the motions, not realizing that all of that pain is stored in the subconscious mind. And although it appears to have been dealt with and not there, all that is required, and you can relate to this, you might find that that person now goes into a new relationship. And in this new relationship, the person makes a statement that harks back to the previous relationship. And bang, just like that, the whole countenance changes and the person is literally thrown back to that previous relationship. Why? Because that word or that action literally acted like a trigger. And all of that stored emotion, frustration, and pain just comes bursting out. And so it shows how my spiritual mentor taught us that one has to learn how to neutralize those painful experiences so that they don't just stay there as a wound and affect you in the future. Because in this case, I've just given, this new relationship that you're in, this person knows nothing about what had gone on previously, yet you are reacting as if they were your former partner. Not cool at all. So it's really important that in this new season, we give some attention to our thoughts. So let me just start off by reading a couple of paragraphs from a book that we're going to be studying in our book study club. So if it's something that it resonates with you, and you'd like to join our book study club, then just let us know and we'll arrange that for you. So it really talks about the importance of thinking. So it starts off by saying, good thinkers are always in demand. A person who knows how may always have a job, but the person who knows why will always be his boss. Good thinkers solve problems. So what I'm doing now is I'm giving you a couple of paragraphs from an author who has written a book on how successful people think. And so this, you can juxtapose this alongside how you currently think. And if all of these things that I'm going to mention you're doing, then hey, presto, you're good. But if not, then take note. So it says, why you should change your thinking. Why you should change your thinking. And he goes on to say, it's hard to overstate the value of changing your thinking. Good thinking can do many things for you: generate revenue, solve problems, and create opportunities. It can take you to a whole new level, as I said earlier on, but a whole new level, both personally and professionally. It really can change your life. Well, I kind of mentioned that. And so, but what I liked about this author is that he went on to say that change thinking is not automatic. So he says, sadly, a change in thinking doesn't happen on its own. And I'm saying that because I often in my work meet up with people where we're talking about challenges that they're going through. I had a conversation with a lady just yesterday, and she said, look, I really want to be successful. And I set goals and I start on programs, but I just never finish. I just don't know what's wrong with me. And so I made a suggestion and she said, I'll think about it. And right there, I was like, well, we know what that's going to result in. Because if we know that our thinking is off and someone's given us an opportunity and that opportunity is being presented as a solution, why are you going to think about it? Well, it's usually because people are often fearful, not fearful of what's being offered to them, but fear dominates their mind. And so as a result, because they're fear-based, they can't see. You see, when you have fear, it clouds your ability to see and think properly. In fact, as I mentioned that, I'm reminded of, so I've got a few books that I want to bring to your awareness today. Here's one, Think and Grow Rich. My business mentor, he used to refer to this book on a daily basis. He always had it very close to him. And in this book, and we've read this as part of our book study club, but in this book, it's literally saying and telling you how to think and grow rich. Not work hard and grow rich, but think and grow rich. And in the third chapter, and it calls it the second step to riches, is fear, is actually faith. Not fear, faith. And the reason why I bring that up is because I want you to check your thinking style. Are you someone that whenever something is presented to you that's slightly outside of your comfort zone, where do you naturally default to? Fear or faith? And it's a really important question that you must ask yourself. Because the truth of the matter is, by spiritual law, faith and fear cannot occupy the same space. So that means in your mind, you have to select one or the other. And if your natural disposition is fear, well, what is the acronym for fear? It's false evidence appearing real. So someone presents an opportunity to you, and rather than being able to look at the opportunity in the cold light of day, your default position is, what if something goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? I'm a bit worried about this. It's not certain. These are the kind of thoughts that pervade your mind. And so before you know it, you literally take yourself out of the game. You literally shut down the opportunity, because by spiritual law, what we focus on grows. Now, the reason why I want to talk through this is because I want to introduce one or two spiritual principles that I don't want you to take my word for it, but actually apply it and test for yourself. Because if that is the case, that what we focus on by spiritual law, we then give life to and it can grow, then what if you were able to consciously give attention to the things that you wanted to experience in your life? So rather than thinking, I haven't got any money or I don't have enough money, how about entertaining the thoughts on the things that you would like to acquire without necessarily even thinking about how they cost, but identifying why that thing is important to you and what benefit your life would have as a result of you having it. And I'm not just talking about wishing on a star. Again, we talked about this in our 5-day challenge where we were focusing on how to move from procrastination to manifestation. And it really is all about how you employ your mind. And I use that word deliberately. How do you employ your mind? Because your mind is supposed to work for you. But for many people, that isn't the case. Unfortunately, for many people, they are a slave to their mind. And that's why Bob Marley sung that song when he said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Because the mental slavery is worse than the physical slavery that Black people once experienced. And if you understand that principle that I shared earlier on, that where the mind goes, the body follows. Well, I put to you that there were people many centuries ago who understood this spiritual law. So they were like, you know what? Let's take the shackles off their feet and let's employ a law of a higher order, meaning it's in the realms of the invisible, it's in the realms of the spiritual. So if we can now just begin to sow seeds in the minds of individuals who are free, they won't even understand what we're doing. But we will have more control over them than when we had chains on their feet. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is go type in Google the Willie Lynch papers. These are papers that were written some 400 years ago, papers that described the way through mind control, how slaves may be controlled and pacified. We're dealing with spiritual principles here. So I'll come back to this book and read again. So we talked about change thinking is not automatic. It also then says that changed thinking is difficult. And it reads, when you hear someone say, now this is just off the top of my head, expect dandruff. The only people who believe thinking is easy are those who don't habitually engage in it. So then the question is, do you habitually, as a habit, do you engage in this kind of thinking consciously? It says Nobel Prize winner, physicist Albert Einstein, one of the best thinkers who ever lived, asserted, thinking is hard work. That's why so few do it. Because thinking is so difficult, you want to use anything you can to help you improve the process. But question, do you actually think or believe that thinking is difficult? Because there's different levels to thinking. As I've mentioned earlier on, there's poverty thinking, there's thinking thinking, there's prosperous thinking, there's intellectual thinking. There are all different levels of thinking. And depending on your aspiration, depending on your vision in terms of the quality of life that you want to live, that should determine the standard of thinking that you want to engage in. And so then I might hear you say, well, how do you take your thinking to the next level? Well, first of all, it's about recognizing, as he said, that it's not easy, it's hard work, and you have to be deliberate and intentional. And sometimes you may have to invest in your mind. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you set a budget every year for money that is going to be used solely for the purpose of investing in your mind as an intention? Well, you should do if you don't, because that's the kind of habit that successful people engage in. And so it says, change thinking is worth the investment. If you don't, then I would encourage you today, put it in your mind that you're going to make a decision to set a budget for your investment. We're in October, you still have a quarter of the year to go. So make that move, make that conscious decision. And it doesn't matter how much money it is, to be honest. What we're engaging in, ladies and gentlemen, is a spiritual practice, the practice of setting an intention. So even if it's £50 that you say, right, this £50 is what I'm going to use to invest in myself. A number of things is going on a subconscious level. One, you're gifting something to yourself. And it's not on the outside. It's not, like a new hat or a new shirt or a new handbag. It's on the inside, meaning that you recognize and value that what's on the inside is just as important, if not more so, than the exterior. And that's going to make you feel good because you're giving yourself a gift. And in so doing, when you make that conscious decision to buy a book or to buy a course, you're now aware that this is what you're doing for your growth, your mental growth. And of course, by doing that, you're now giving yourself the capacity to expand. You see, many people are quite happy being content, being comfortable. But what's important is that we must learn to be uncomfortable, or should I say, we must learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, meaning always stretching ourselves, especially our mind. So he says, the author, oh, look at that, the author, Napoleon Hill, the author of this book, Think and Grow Rich, observed, more gold has been mined from the thoughts of man than has ever been taken from the earth. Think about that. I mean, case in point, just look around your room. I'm not there with you, but I know this for sure as a spiritual law. Everything that you can see around you in the room that you are in, wherever you are, came out of the mind of someone who decided to create it and then sell it to you. That's how powerful your mind is. See, when you take the time to learn how to change your thinking and become a better thinker, he says, you are investing in yourself. Gold mines tap out. Stock markets crash. Real estate investments can go sour. But a human mind with the ability to think well is like a diamond mine that never runs out. It is priceless. So, do you see your mind in that way? Question. And feel free to give me your thoughts and your feedback, because I'd like this to be interactive. You know, are you the kind of person that's always asking questions so that you can grow your mind? You know, if you read my book, for those of you who have a copy, you'll see that when I met my spiritual mentor, what made our relationship spark is that I was in a room, there was a bunch of people, 50 or more. And he said, after he delivered his speech, he said, was there anyone that wanted to ask a question? And there was a silence for a moment. And I saw that no one had questions, so I put my hand up. And I asked the question. He answered it. I sat down. He waited. There was no more questions. I put my hand up. And that continued. I must have asked about 10 questions, one after another. And that's when he was like, okay, he could see that I was keen to learn. I wanted to grow my mind. And so he said, son, why don't you come and see me privately? Let's have a conversation. And that was the beginning of a journey that has now lasted some 39 years. There's a power in wanting to grow your mind, to be a seeker of knowledge. You know, asking questions is a way that you demonstrate that. And, you know, for me, ASK is an acronym. A stands for always, S stands for seeking, K stands for knowledge. You must have that as your default position. See, unfortunately, for many of us, when we've gone to school, college, and maybe we've graduated out of university, certainly here in the West, for many people, they feel, well, because they've got a degree now, you know, they're a big shot and you can't tell them anything because they know everything. Now, that's not everyone. I also have a degree, so I know that mindset. But the beauty for me was that I met my spiritual mentor when I was a teenager. And so I never actually ever grew out of that mindset of being in a student mode. See, for many adults, they have graduated and as big people, because now we're earning a salary and we've got the qualification and we've got the job title, they stop the learning and think or feel that they've arrived, only to find out years later that successful people who know how to think never stop learning. It's just part of the course. Now, I saw someone put their hand up and I was just about to bring them on and then they disappeared. So if you could raise your hand up again, please, and I'll be quick to bring you on, because definitely we do want your comments on and contributions. Okay, so I believe it's Patricia. So I'm going to bring you on. We normally do this a bit later on, but I'm going to bring you on now to ask your question. So, Patricia, are you there? And would you like to ask your question? I think we're having difficulty bringing Patricia on. Yeah, it seems like I've tried to promote you, but it's not promoted you. So if you'd care to ask your question in the chat, that would be great. So do we have any other questions from anyone? So what are we learning? That to be successful or to be a successful thinker is a constantly learning process. So Patricia says her thing is not being good enough. Well, that's an interesting choice of words, because she said not being as opposed to not thinking I'm good enough, because that's actually what's going on. You're thinking that you're not good enough. And so by spiritual law, if that's your focus, I'm not good enough, then that's what will manifest. But if you could find and create scenarios and opportunities for you to be able to celebrate the things that you are good at, and this is an exercise I did many years ago with my spiritual mentor, and this may help you directly, Patricia. If you take a sheet of paper or a couple of sheets of paper and write a list of no less than 50 things that you are good at. And what may happen is you'll get to maybe 10, 15, and 20, and then you'll feel like it's exhausted. But stay with it. Don't leave. And you'll find, just like an athlete who sometimes gets a second wind, you'll get a second wind of a flush of ideas. And you'll be able to continue writing that list. And once you've done that list, reading it over continually on a daily basis for 30 days, and you will begin to discover that your mindset will begin to change from not feeling good enough. And what is this technique that we're doing? You see, when on the 5-day challenge, I spoke about how our mind is constituted. Yes, we have the conscious mind and we have the subconscious mind, but we also have the unconscious mind and we have the superconscious mind. I'm not going to go into those today because it's not relevant to what Patricia just mentioned. But the exercise that I've asked Patricia to do engages on the conscious level. We have what is referred to by some as the left brain and the right brain, or some refer to it as the feminine aspect of the mind and the masculine aspect of the mind. And what are these? Quite simply, the right brain or the feminine aspect of the mind is where creativity dwells, and it's how you access your ideas, your visions. When you are dreaming, it's all done through that right hemisphere. And the left hemisphere or the left brain is where it engages in what some refer to as the masculine energy, which is very logical and linear in its approach. And what I have found is that we've never been taught that in order for you to increase the quality of your thinking, it requires you to, one, understand the two hemispheres, but also know how to engage them in a holistic way. You see, for many of you're actually your own worst enemy because you're doing battle in your mind. You think a positive thought and then you think a negative thought, and of course the two negate each other and cancel themselves out. But this exercise that I just asked you to do, Patricia, what it will actually have you do is, by writing the list down, you are bringing logical, evidential instances of things that you do well or excel in. And to arrive at those thoughts, you're having to engage in that creative aspect. You're having to think about the different instances. So you're actually combining both of the thinking processes. And so you write the list down. You've now got these lists of evidence. And then when you read them back to yourself on a daily basis, it is now seeping into your subconscious mind. And as a result, by you doing it every day consecutively, you are reinforcing into your subconscious mind. And remember, I said earlier on, spiritual law, what you focus on, you give the capacity to grow. So now you're consciously inserting these positive thoughts that are true about you in a positive way. And as a result, I wouldn't be surprised, and it would be great if you did the experiment and let us know what happened, that you would begin to feel better about yourself because your confidence and conscious awareness of the fact that I can do stuff would increase whilst you are neglecting focusing on what you can't do. Put it to the test. and let us know how you get on. Okay, any other questions that anyone would like to ask before we continue? And you might say, well, okay, it's all well and good, but I'm not really sold, Tony. And as I was preparing for today, I was reminded of a conversation I had last year with my business mentor, because it came up again today in conversation with someone. And I thought I'd share it with you to show you how the quality of your thinking literally will determine the quality of your life and your experience. So I've been blessed to have had a business mentor who was very successful. He's actually a billionaire. And I say blessed because to be able to have regular conversations with someone who has achieved that status, not that it's hard to attain, let's put it that way. When I first met him and I was doing some research, I found out that on the planet of some 7 billion people at that time, there were only 250,000 billionaires on the planet. So he's achieved some stuff, But what for me was really profound is how we came together, because I'd had a spiritual mentor for decades, and everything that I do really kind of is born out of that spiritual place. But I also had this desire to want to impact more people. And so as a result, I knew that I had to do business that would allow me to create a framework so that I could have a business model that worked and would enable us to engage with more people. But in all honesty, ladies and gentlemen, that was a little bit of a struggle for me, because I was almost leaning too much to the spiritual side. And if you knew my background and my story and where I'm coming from, that is my soul's nature, to want to empower and to give and to invest in people. And so this gentleman coming into my life was literally a blessing, as if life knew that I needed to have the balance in my mind. My spiritual mentor was very, creative, spiritual, which is for me, right-brained. And now I was blessed with a mentor who was business, very linear, wants to know what's the bottom line, how much profit, what is our income, our expenditure, like no nonsense. And so the blessing for me was being mentored by him gave me the opportunity to focus on that area, which was currently my weakness in terms of doing good business. And so now I'm able to balance the two. But what was really interesting, and I'll just share the story just to give you evidence for your left brain, as it were, to prove what I'm saying and the importance of it. We were in, I think it was March, April, or May, and we were talking. And of course, the COVID had hit. And he laughed and said, isn't it funny, Tony? In the month of February, I made more money that month. Whilst people were, this whole pandemic was going on, I made more money that month than I've ever made. And he began to tell me the story, which I'll break down when we, I'm going to treat this in a couple of weeks' time, when we're going to talk about money and what I believe is the mindset of God, where our life is concerned. But this gentleman made $2 billion in 1 month. Now, the reason why I mention that is because the genius came from just an idea, one thought. He obviously, as a man who's been in business for over 50 years, he's got a lot of experience. But he had one thought based on what he saw happening with the COVID and how it was affecting economies. And unlike most of us, he put that thought into action. You see, for many of us, we have thoughts, we have ideas, and it only takes one idea to, as you can see, make millions, if not billions of pounds. But this is where the fear stroke faith comes into play. See, when he executed his idea, there was no fear. There was complete, total faith that his idea would work. Now, my question to you is, do you operate like that? Because when he broke it down to me and showed me how it was done, I was like, wow, genius. But more importantly, and this is why I encourage people to find a mentor or a coach, the more important lesson that I learned as a result of him sharing the story and other stories is that my mind, my left brain, that says this is not possible, prove it, linear thinking, my mind was being given instances, proof, and evidence of things that ordinarily might have blown my mind. So my left brain couldn't negate it and couldn't say it's not possible, because here was a man in real time telling me the story. And this is the benefit of you if you really want to change your mindset. It requires an investment, but are you willing to invest in your mind? And you see, I read somewhere, in fact, it was Robert Kiyosaki. I was watching a video and he said, you see, when you present an opportunity to someone who has a poverty mindset, they will say the first thing is, I can't afford it. Even before you tell them how much it costs. And I've had that. Like, I can't afford that. But what if I said it was 10 pence? Then what would you do? You're going to look like a fool. But they were already in that mental space that it is not possible for me. And so if you have that as a mindset, it doesn't matter. It ain't going to work. Whereas if you have the mindset that I really want to change my mind. In fact, I'll give a story comes to mind. Even today, as I've said, we've just finished our 5-day challenge. And there was a lady that had decided that she wanted to step up. She wanted to take it to the next level. And we offered people the opportunity to join our 90-day challenge. The 90-day challenge, that even Michael Oni had been on. And she said, no, you know what? I can't afford it. And we were like, cool. She said, I'll do the 14-day challenge. No problem. But then within 24 hours, I got a message coming back saying that the woman had decided she changed her mind. She was like, I must change my life. It's not working the way I want it to. I have to change my life. You know what? I'm going to do the 90-day. I'm going to find the money. We'll make it work. I said, of course we'll make it work, because I want this for you. And it requires an investment. Now, I made a mistake back in the day. Like I said, I've been in this space for some 30 years. And for 20 of those years, when I worked with people, primarily people from disadvantaged, because that's me. If you have been disadvantaged or marginalized, particularly our young and women, then I'm in your corner. And so I was here doing our work, investing over a period of time, over 20 years, almost 2 million into various projects up and down the country so that people didn't have to pay. Now, the irony of this is that my spiritual mentor had told me from day one, don't do that. And I'm like, why? I want to help people. Like, if I can help them in that way, they don't have to pay, that's going to be great. He said, yeah, but by spiritual law, it won't work, because people who pay attention. People who don't pay don't. And it took me 20 years to come to that realization that it's true. It's a spiritual law. So now we, yes, want to invest, but it does require that you invest in yourself, because it's a demonstration of your desire manifested, that you are prepared, you believe in you, and you're taking some of your money, and through faith and conviction and determination, you're going to make this thing work. So my question to you is, do you operate like that? And the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention, because here we are, we're in the last quarter of the year. And so I'm really shouting out to people who you may have set goals from way back in January, and half of them are not being realized. But you still have, a quarter of the year to go. With changed thinking, however you do it, however you do it, you can accelerate how you manifest things in your life. So I'm hoping that through this evening, you may be motivated or inspired to take action. See, having the thought in your mind and having fear or faith, well, we've learned that you don't want to have fear. You want to be able to dispel the fear so that you have the faith. But when you have the faith, as it says in the good book, faith without works is dead. So you have to take action. It's a must. Faith on its own ain't going to do anything. And that's why our personal development company is branded with my surname, Dada, which I've turned into an acronym. D stands for discover. A, your aptitude, your gifts, your talents, and what you're good at. So you discover your aptitude, and then you work hard, D, in developing them. And when you've discovered your gifts, your talents, your aptitude, and you developed it, you must do the final step, which is the A, which is to actualize it, to bring it into the physical realm. So me talking to you and you being inspired to take action, well, unless you take action, nothing is going to happen. And thinking successfully requires you to think and then to act. So I'm going to read just a little bit more from this. I'm mindful of the time. Wow, is that the time already? I didn't realize that the time had gone. Let me pause then and ask if there are any more questions, because we're almost at 9 o'clock and I want to see if there are any questions that I can take before we go into our private zone. Any questions? Okay, well, then it may be that I've given you a lot of food for thought. I hope so, because it's a real serious time that we're living in, one that requires you to have your mind right, to be able to protect your mind, to be able to think like successful people do, to learn that which has not been taught in school, college, or universities, how to think your way to success. And if you don't know how to, well, then maybe you pick up a copy of this book. I don't get no commission from it, Think and Grow Rich, but if it was good for a man who became a billionaire, oh, and by the way, my business mentor read this book for the first time at the age of 14, and it never left his side. And at the time when he read it, he was virtually homeless, broke, and had no money. And so if it can work for him, where he had no direction, was pretty much an orphan at 14, and yet through this one book, he was able to become a multi-billionaire. If it can happen for him, why can't it happen for you? And it would cost you no more than £25 to invest in a copy of the book. So What am I saying as a result of that? I'm saying to invest in your mind, however little money you have. Do not let money be an excuse. Because if it's only £25, you can start there. My book is even cheaper than that. It's £20 and you can start there, But prove to yourself that you're going to be committed to yourself throughout the remainder of 2021. And I would love for you to make the set intention that you're going to start 2022 with a clear decision being made that you are going to take some of your money and invest in the developing and expansion of your mind. I hope this has been useful to you. We're going to sign out now, but take action and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Next week, we're going to have a discussion around mental health. I understand it's Mental Health Day during the course of next week, and I'm going to be bringing some of our practitioners who have experience in the NHS and this area of mental health, and they will show you and give you proof as to what I've been saying today, why the most important thing that needs your attention and your protection in this season, ladies and gentlemen, is your mind. Neglect it at your peril. So join me next week, same time, same place. For now, it's me, Tony Dada, your soul brother from another mother saying, enough love.